Hello there friends and welcome! Today at long last we are finally getting started with our Expedition 33 builds. First with Gustave, the earliest party member. With this build your Gustave will become quite the beastly expert sniper, capable of firing loads and loads and loads of shots at the enemies for huge amounts of damage even early, as to gun them down into submission, while also generating loads of extra AP to himself to keep the attack and shot chain going, and even debuffing the enemies with Burn and Mark for higher damage and party synergy. Most importantly, you'll also get to combine all of this with Gustave's powerful skills and his normal attacks, all in the very same turn, even on the first turn of battle, while debuffing enemies further and even getting loads of HP back through the powerful lifesteal mechanic on every attack. And everything here is on expert mode, of course. So without further ado, let us get on with our Gustave Sniper Tank Life-Stealing build. First, let us cover the best skills from our Gustave build. The first one you should rush for is Marking Shot. It only costs 1 AP and deals low single target lightning damage. Most importantly, it applies Mark. Mark of course is a very useful debuff because whenever you attack a marked enemy, they'll take higher damage, and some skills like for example Luna's starter Immolation actually have increased effects when attacking a marked enemy. In her case, it will apply more burn for more damage. Also do note the damage type is lightning, which means unlike let's say Gustave's normal attacks or his Lumiere Assault starter skill, this will inflict full damage to enemies that might resist physical attacks, like the common enemies, the Abests you fight even early in the game. Plus some enemies are weak to lightning, like those in the Flying Waters area. Later you won't really be using this, but for the early game, very early anyways, it can help a lot. The second skill you wanna get is Recovery, but for that we first need Powerful. This can apply the Powerful buff to allies, which increases your damage by 25%. I wouldn't really recommend it, however, because you have better uses for your turn, especially since when you are getting a lot of turns, your buffs will disappear fast, as they are counted based on how many turns your characters are getting. And with agility that's a lot. Anyways, we only want Powerful so we can get Recovery. Recovery is Gustave's main self-healing skill and it can restore his HP by a lot, 50%. Most importantly, it also dispels status effects and even provides him with charges to feed into his most powerful Overcharge skill, of course. This can help you early when you won't have as powerful Alpha Strikes to easily destroy everything into submission, so of course you might be getting hit, which means Recovery can help. Next up, you wanna rush for Shatter, which is Gustave's most powerful area of effect skill. This deals high lightning damage to all enemies, which is amazing for clearing trash mobs. And it can even break enemies at the same time, something very useful because by default, only his Overcharge starter skill can also break. And broken enemies are of course stunned. Last but not least, if the enemy is broken by the attack, your Overcharge will also be fully charged, which means you can of course on the next turn follow it up with an Overcharge for maximum damage and potentially stunning the enemy again, so long as you have enough AP for both. Overall, this is his most powerful skill because of how much it can accomplish. Now, his other leftover skills from Fire and Strike Storm, I'm afraid aren't really that useful. You can get them of course, because if you grind a bit, you will have enough points for all of them in Act 1. The From Fire skill can provide some self-healing with damage, but our build will already have lifesteal for free on your attacks anyways, and you will attack multiple times. Lastly, Strike Storm can deal decent enough damage, but I wouldn't really recommend it over Shatter or Overcharge. There's just not much of a use for it. Now let us cover stats and attributes for our Gustave build. The most important stat early on for almost any character is agility. It doesn't matter if your weapon won't have high scaling with agility, because honestly weapon scaling only matters way later in the game. Act 3 usually, by the way. Thing is, if you're playing the character from the start, because he will have self-healing that is directly tied to how high his health is, you might also spend some points into vitality. Around 15 is enough, you can even go for 20 or 30 if you want. This is only if it's really your first time playing the game and you are on expert mode. If you're already familiar with the mechanics, agility is definitely the way to go. The thing with agility is that it only becomes really powerful once you can pick the first strike PICTOS in the last dungeon of Act 1. Cause that is how you get dual turns before any enemy, including bosses. So before that, agility won't really do much. So of course you can just go with Vitality, then respec into agility later. The recult items for respecking, you can farm them even early, there's really no shortage of them at all. But yeah, agility is definitely the ultimate choice. The thing with agility is, once you reach around 70, you'll get diminishing returns when it comes to speed bonuses. For example, at 70 agility, Gustave would have 629 speed. The rest comes from our gear. Meanwhile, 10 points into luck now will provide a very similar effect to speed, except of course, it also increases your critical rate. Therefore, past 70 agility, just focus it all out into luck instead, as you get both higher criticals and higher speed as well. But chances are you won't reach such high levels, like 25 plus in Act 1, unless you grind. You can do it just fine in the Yellow Harvest area. The enemies there are very easy to defeat and give a lot of experience, if you want of course. Now let's discover gear and weapons for our Gustave. My favorite weapon for him is the Lanceram's sword. It's a physical type weapon, with decent enough attack power. Most importantly, in Act 1 you can find a level 6 variant by just defeating a certain overworld map encounter. It's decent, the high level version is free, what's not to love? Yes, it scales based on vitality, also some leftover points into agility, but like I said, weapon scaling doesn't matter that much in Act 1. I wouldn't really bother with elemental weapons for Gustave early, like Galteron, for example. A lot of enemies early resist or even absorb earth damage. The same for cold damage. So Lanceram is the way. Now let's discover PICTOS and Lumina. For his PICTOS, it's mostly extra agility and some critical rate, but agility is definitely king. Now, because our Gustave build will also have life stealing on his attacks, which is tied to his maximum HP, I also have Energizing Pain here, just to provide him with a decent enough amount of extra HP, 308, which is quite respectable, basically 10 points into Vitality or so, even higher than that, just coming from this. Now for the Luminas, which are also tied to your PICTOS abilities of course. For this build, I decided to focus into a sniper playstyle that has a lot of extra attacks per turn, so you can easily handle almost any random encounter by virtue of just having Gustave machine gunning enemies into submission. Plus, this also lets you use the normal attack mechanic at the same time for extra AP and life stealing. So first we want to boost our free aimed shot mechanic. For that, you first want Augmented Aim, which highly increases your free aim shot damage, you can find it very early, followed by Burning Shots, for a very nice chance of burning enemies for free automatically. Burn is very useful in this game for extra damage, and it has a lot of mechanics reliant on it, like Critical Burn, to highly increase the critical chance of all party members against burning enemies, followed by Marking Shots, the same as Burn, but instead you get to apply Mark for free, which of course also highly increases Gustave's damage. Then you also want the highly useful Dead Energy PICTOS, as to constantly generate AP on killing enemies, something Gustave will excel at, as he machine guns them into submission. Besides that, you want to boost your normal attack side, because as I already mentioned, you can unleash all of your normal shots and then follow it up with an attack at the same turn. For that you have Attack Lifesteal, which will recover his health by a lot on every attack. This one isn't really necessary for random battles, but can help against boss battles, as they will last longer. Then we have Augmented Attack for a huge amount of extra base attack damage, followed by Versatile, which does the same and stacks. Except Versatile requires you to do a free aim shot first, which you will always of course, that's the point of the build. Besides that, you'll want PICTOS that apply debuffs on your normal attack, most importantly Exposing Attack, so that your attacks will apply defenseless for one turn. It's just for the normal attack, not your free aimed shots. Defenseless is very useful because it increases the damage the enemies take of course, and some characters like my L build, also post, have abilities that benefit from it, like getting extra turns. There's also a PICTOS called Empowering Attack, which applies the powerful buff automatically whenever Gustave attacks. I just think it's quite expensive for this point in the game, so I don't bother with it at all, but it's something you can pick if you want, and have enough points to spare. The same for a Breaker, it's just very expensive. Anyways, besides that, it's just some generic PICTOS for extra utility, such as the highly useful Energizing Start for higher AP at the start of battle, which means he can unleash a lot of free aimed shots even on turn 1. Something that matters because of course you wanna burn the enemies for your allies to increase their critical chance, and also mark them. By the way, there's also a PICTOS called Rewarding Mark, very useful because it increases the AP you have on the first turn by marking the enemy for even more free shots. Staggering attack can also help, it's very cheap. The same for teamwork as a generic damage boost. And I also have the highly useful Energizing Attack 1 equipped as a PICTOS because it is expensive. This provides 1 extra AP on a base attack, which means of course you'll now recover 2 AP points for every attack you'll have. So the build is also quite sustainable, not just AP-wise, but HP-wise as well due to the life stealing. I also have First Strike as a PICTOS, one of the best PICTOS in the game that every character should always have to ensure you act first and get those tasty dual turns before even bosses when you min-max agility. Well, besides that, the classic dodger is good, and something like SOS Shell is only here because I had the points for it. Stun boost can also help. Now for our last section, let's cover how to play as Gustave and our best strategies. Very early in the game, you're basically just using your marking shot ability and following it up with Lune's fire skills. However, as soon as the second dungeon, you can already get most of the PICTOS that boost your machine gun free aim shot style for extra damage, marking on hit, burning on hit. So essentially, all you have to do is start battle with Gustave and begin sniping enemies down one by one, as you'll not only kill them all, but also generate AP so you can keep on firing and firing. The last thing you should do, of course, once you run out of AP, is do your normal attack, as you lifesteal, damage the enemy, and debuff them further for your other allies' follow-ups, especially Mael, with her extra turn ability. If you want, you might also start battle with someone like Lune, who can use her Wildfire ability to, let's say, reduce the health of enemies down, so Gustave has an easier time killing them when sniping, and proccing the Dead Energy PICTOS for higher AP so he can keep the chain going. Against some enemies, once you have the Energizing Start ability that lets you start battle with 5 AP, you might also consider just going for his powerful Shatter ability right at the start, as that can deal super high damage. Also, don't forget, once you are shooting at the enemies, if you're left with just a few points of AP, and you mark the enemy, it might be better to save the leftover AP for later, so you're left with something like 2 AP or so on, so that you then follow it up with a normal attack as you benefit from the mark, dealing loads and loads of extra damage because you have so many extra damage modifiers to your normal attack power. You can of course also use Gustave's starter Lumiere assault skill early as to provide free charges, since the more charges he gets, the stronger his overcharge skill will become. The thing is, once you get all the PICTOS necessary for our sniper playstyle, Lumiere assault becomes kinda useless because Gustave will also generate charges by dodging, parrying, and, most importantly, will get full charges instantly if you break the enemy with Shatter. Also, don't forget, when it comes to his unique overcharge skill, even if you have no charges whatsoever, you can and should still use it to break the enemies if their break gauge is full, because the breaking effect will still work. Well, alright friends, so this was it from my Gustave sniper, tank, and life-stealing build. If you found this guide useful, as always, please remember to like, subscribe, and also consider becoming a channel member if you can. Next up, you'll have builds for Verso and Mael, the strongest characters in the game for the highest damage.